Hello everyone, I'm the Saxy Gamer. Today we're here for yet another Civilization 6 Leader Spotlight, where today we're taking a look at Gitarja of Indonesia. So Gitarja's first ability is known as Exalted Goddess of the Three Worlds, and it makes it so that she can purchase naval units with faith. In addition to this, her religious units pay no movement to embark or disembark, and she gains +2 faith to every single city center that is adjacent to a coast or lake tile. So I think that Exalted Goddess of the Three Worlds is pretty good. The fact that you can buy naval units with faith happens to work out quite nicely with Gitarja, because you can go a weird faith and naval domination game where you settle a lot of cities on the coast. That'll get you a lot of faith because you'll be getting +2 faith from each one of those city centers, and then you can use that faith to either purchase missionaries and apostles, which then you can move faster to other land masses because they don't have to pay movement to embark or disembark, or you could go ahead and buy a bunch of naval ships and send them to the other land masses and beat up on whoever's there. So I think that Exalted Goddess of the Three Worlds is situationally a very strong ability. It really depends on the map type. If you're playing on Pangaea, then it's a terrible ability. If you're playing on Archipelago or something like that, then it is actually quite strong. So overall, I think it is quite good. Gitarja's second ability is known as Great Nusantara, and it makes it so that coast and lake tiles provide minor adjacency bonuses to holy sites, campuses, industrial zones, and theater squares. And in addition to this, she gets +1 amenity from entertainment to each entertainment complex that is adjacent to a coast or lake tile. So Great Nusantara it's fairly okay. I wouldn't describe it as outstanding or great, but you can get a little bit more adjacency for your district. So I do think it is quite nice. So minor adjacency means that you have to have two tiles to get one additional yield, so that's plus 0.5 of the respective yield per coast or lake tile. So at a maximum, if you somehow manage to make it, if there's like a one tile island or something, you put a district on there, you would only be getting an additional +3 adjacency. So it's not going to provide too much extra yields, but it can provide a little bit, and that can be especially nice for things such as theater squares and holy sites, which, just a little bit more culture, a little bit more faith can be very useful. So overall, I think the Great Nusantara is okay. It's not as good as some of the other adjacency bonus things like Australia's, but it's still better than nothing, so I think it's just okay. As far as Indonesia's unique unit is concerned, we have the Zhang, which is a special unit that replaces the frigate. It has a melee strength of 45 and a range strength of 55, both of which are the exact same as the frigate. It has a movement of 5, which is 1 more than the frigate, and a production cost of 300, which is 20 more than the frigate. Has some special abilities as well, so all units that are in formation with the Zhang will match its movement. So say you have a missionary that's embarked, and you click the little link up button with one of your Zhangs, then both the missionary and the Zhang will have 5 movements, so you can speed them across the ocean just a little bit faster. And also, whenever you have a Zhang that's in formation, it gains +5 combat strength. So this can be incredibly useful, just because if you either A, have them in formation with missionaries, so maybe you're going to another landmass or something like that, you want to take some missionaries over there to spread your religion, and maybe you want to take a few cities as well, you can have your Zhangs and your missionaries in formation with each other, and then 1, they'll move really fast, and 2, they'll give the Zhangs extra combat strength, so it'll be a little bit easier to take cities, and then you take the city, and then you convert it to your religion. So that does work out quite nicely with the Zhangs. This also counts for great admirals as well, so if you put a great admiral in formation with a Zhang, then it'll have quite significantly higher combat strength than, say, a frigate or something like that. So for that, it is pretty good. The extra movement is very nice. The extra production cost normally doesn't matter too much. 20 production isn't too bad, and the other thing is you can upgrade these, or you can upgrade into these, so it's not that bad, when you take that all into account. So overall, the Zhang, I think, is a fairly decent unit. It's not outstanding, but it is pretty good nonetheless. Moving on to Indonesia's unique tile improvement, we have the Kampung, which is a special tile improvement that unlocks with shipbuilding. It must be built on coast adjacent to a sea resource, and once you're able to put it down, you will get +1 production, which then rises to +2 whenever you research civil engineering, +1 food from each adjacent fishing boat, so you have to make sure that you do put the fishing boat over the sea resource to get that food, and you get +1 housing, which then rises to +2 with mass production. In addition to this, the Kampungs will also provide tourism equal to the amount of bonus food once flight is researched. So the Kampungs, I think, are situationally extremely strong for multiple reasons. So 1, if you're able to get Auckland in the game, you can get insanely good sea tiles, because then if you have Auckland and you have Kampungs, you can get sea tiles that gain +4 production from each Kampung, which is absolutely insane, and then you can get additional food, additional housing. So if you have Auckland in the game, then Kampungs are really good, or even if you're just able to get a nice blob of them, they are really good. They do work well with Indonesia, since Indonesia likes to settle on coast a lot, because then they get the +2 faith from that. the kampungs make it a little bit easier to deal with having coastal tiles, because a lot of coastal tiles normally would be dead tiles that you can't put improvements on, or, you know, they don't have particularly great yields. But with the kampungs, you can get some pretty good yields out of coastal tiles, and especially if Auckland's in the game. So overall, I think that the kampung is pretty good for Indonesia. It wouldn't work as well if, you know, the Civ wasn't as coastal as it is, but considering how coastal Indonesia is, I really do like the kampung. And now with all of this in mind, it is time to talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses of Gitarja and the Indonesians in Civ 6. So for the first strength, I really do like how easily the Indonesians can perform naval rushes. So just with the fact that you're able to purchase naval units with faith, it makes it really easy to stockpile a bunch of naval units up, especially since you're going to be getting a little bit more faith from having your cities on the coast. So you can go ahead in the early game, settle a lot of cities on the coast, start stockpiling faith, and then you can either buy quadremes and then upgrade them to Zhongs, or just straight up buy Zhongs, and then you can just go rush someone else. So just, it is really easy to get a lot of naval units as Indonesia, and it is something that I really like, because if someone else has a lot of coastal cities, you can get them quite easily as Indonesia. So for that, I do think that they are quite good. The other really big strength of Indonesia is that the kampung is a quite strong improvement, especially considering Indonesia's playstyle. So as I just mentioned, Indonesia really likes being on the coast, and normally I would not be a fan of being on the coast, because you get a lot of coast tiles, a lot of ocean tiles, tiles that would normally be dead because they don't have particularly great yields and you really can't improve them. But with the kampung, you know, you can get a lot more production on those tiles, you can get some extra food, you can get some extra housing out of it, and it just kind of works out well with how Indonesia is. So I really do like the kampungs, and if you have Auckland in the game as well, then it's going to be absolutely insane. You can get some really good cities with kampungs and Auckland. So overall, kampungs, definitely something that's very good. As far as weaknesses is concerned, though, one of the big ones is that you really need a lot of coastal cities, both for yourself and for your opponents. So whenever you're playing Indonesia, if you aren't able to get a lot of coastal cities, then Indonesia really is not very good. And also, if your opponents aren't settling a lot of coastal cities, then Indonesia's power goes down a lot as well. Kind of like with Norway, just because if there aren't a lot of cities on the coast for you to take with your navy, then you really lose a lot of your military power. So it is really nice whenever your opponents have a lot of coastal cities, and then if you have a lot of coastal cities as well, then you can get some faith, you can buy naval units with that faith, and then go take their coastal cities, and then you can get even more faith. So you are really reliant on there being a lot of coastal cities in the game, and without that, Indonesia really, really suffers. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to play Indonesia, play on something like, play on island plates or archipelago, and you'll have a much better time. The other big weakness of Indonesia is that they are partially reliant on certain city-states to make them really good. So as I've mentioned Auckland a lot. Auckland takes Indonesia from, you know, like a kind of mass civ to like a really, really good civ. So you are really reliant on Auckland being in the game. Another really good one is Nan Madol, which gives you additional culture for having districts that are built on coast, because then you'll be getting the additional adjacency from the coast, and you'll also be getting +2 culture because the district is on the coast. So that will help a culture game out. But the thing that sucks is that, you know, you really don't want to have to say, like, you need these city-states in the game for a civ to be good, because that, you can't really rely on that to be good in a game, because that is just RNG after all, and you don't want to rely on RNG, so I do consider that to be quite a big weakness of Indonesia. And now it is that time to give Gitarja and the Indonesians their tier ranking. So if you're new to the series, what I do is I give each leader a tier ranking in each of the 4 victory types, so domination, science, culture, and religion, and those rankings just kind of gauge the leader's general proficiency at attaining either of the rankings. I also give them an overall ranking that just kind of pits them against the other leaders in the game and takes into account other things such as their spawn bias, their unique units, their versatility, and it just kind of gives you an idea of where they fall amongst the other leaders in the game. All of our rankings go from S to F, with S being the highest and F being terrible. So let's go ahead and rank Gitarja. So Domination's up first, and I think that Gitarja deserves a B in Domination. It really is dependent on what map type you're playing. If you're playing on Island Plates, if you're playing on Archipelago, then I think that Indonesia could go up to like an A in Domination, just because there's a lot more coastal cities, a lot more stuff for you to take with your navy, because that's where Indonesia really shines, is with their navy. They get the Zhong, which is a fairly decent unique unit, and then if you're able to get Zhongs with great admirals, then they will be extremely strong, able to beat pretty much anything else in the era, so that is a very good thing. In addition, you can also purchase your naval units with faith, so if you're stockpiling a bunch of that, you can then use that to buy a bunch of units, maybe rush somebody, and it works out well. But, you know, if you're playing on Pangaea or something like that, then Indonesia is going to be really bad at Domination, because you really can't rely on a navy for that, or like on that map type, so it doesn't work out very well. So I think overall is just like an average of the map types. I think that Indonesia is pretty decent and is deserving of a B in Domination. Science is up next, and I think Indonesia deserves a C. They do get a little bit of bonus towards science just in their extra yield, or their extra adjacency yields for their campuses for being next to lake or coast tiles. But overall, that's only going to get you maybe 1 or maybe 2 extra science on your campuses, so I don't consider it to be that great. And aside from that, they really just don't have any other bonuses towards it, so I think they're pretty average and deserve a C. As far as culture is concerned, more of the same here. I was almost going to give them a B, just because, you know, you do get the extra yields for your theater squares, and also kampungs will provide tourism eventually. The only thing is, I don't think that kampungs will provide enough tourism, because most of the time they're going to be providing maybe, you know, 1 or maybe 2 tourism each, so I don't think it's going to stack up too heavily. So I think they're still fairly average in culture, and I think they're deserving of a C. That one is a little bit up for debate, maybe like a C+, but it's very situational. You know, if Nan Madol's in the game as well, then maybe I would put them at a B, but aside from that, I think they're pretty average and deserve a C. And religion is up last, and I think that Indonesia is deserving of an A in religion. They are one of the better religious civs in the game. So you can get quite a bit of faith just from having a bunch of coastal cities, because you get +2 faith from each coastal city that you have. So that already is very nice. Also, your religious units don't have to spend any movement to embark or disembark, so that makes it easier to get to other continents to spread your religion. So more points for that. And also, you can get a bit more adjacency bonus on your holy sites, which just turns into more faith, which means more missionaries, which means a lot of everything. So overall, I think that Indonesia is probably one of the better religious civs in the game. I didn't give them an S for one reason, and that's that they really don't get any bonuses towards attaining a great prophet, which is a big part of playing a religion game, because if you don't get that, then your entire religion game is gone, and Indonesia doesn't have any bonus towards going for a great prophet, so that's the only reason I didn't put them at an S tier. But Indonesia is a very good religious civ, and I do think it's one of the better victory types for them, so I think they deserve an A. And for their overall ranking, I think that Indonesia is deserving of a B. Indonesia is a civ that is situationally very good. It's kind of like Saladin, that in some games Saladin works really well, but in some games he doesn't. It's more of the same with Indonesia. So if you're playing on archipelago or island plates, and maybe you're able to get a religion early and there's not too many other religious civs in the game, then Indonesia can be really strong. Or if Auckland's in the game, or if Nan Madol's in the game, all of those things kind of work together to make Indonesia a lot better than they normally would be. But those things are only situational, and then otherwise Indonesia is just kind of okay. So considering that they have the possibility to be really good, but they're not always really good, I think that kind of averages them out to just be a little bit better than average, and I think that puts them at a B ranking. So just, you know, they get a few bonuses, but they're a little bit inconsistent and a little bit random. You have to rely on RNG a little bit, so I think they are at the B tier. So thank you everyone for watching. I've been the Saxy Gamer. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to like. If not, feel free to dislike. If you're looking for more Civilization 6 content, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and goodbye.